Hello, my name is Alia DeLong, and I am a graduate research assistant at the University of Florida. I work with Dr. Swisher in the Department of Family, Youth, and Community Sciences and Dr. Carlene Chase in the Horticultural Sciences Department. Today I will be discussing my presentation, Emerging Identities, a New Generation of Organic Farmers, a Systematic Literature Review. Today's presentation will cover some background information about this project, the methodology I followed, key results, and a discussion in conclusion. I'd like to thank the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture for funding this project. I first became interested in this topic when the results from the 2017 Census of Ag came out in April of 2019. The key trends that caught my attention are here. The average age of a farmer is 57.5, which is following an increasing trend from census to census. The number of farms with female producers increased 23% from 2012 to 2017. There was a 5% increase in new and beginning farmers from 2012 to 2017. 1 in 4 producers is a beginning farmer with 10 or fewer years of experience and an average age of 46.3. There was a small 2% increase in the percentage of young farmers from 2012 to 2017. Organic product sales increased from 3.1 to 7.2 billion in 2012 to 2017. In the same period, total sales actually decreased a little bit. Taken together, it appears that we have an aging agricultural sector with a marginal increase in new and beginning farmers and young farmers. There are more female producers and organic sales more than doubled in 5 years' time. Is it possible that there are not enough farmers entering the agricultural sector to meet the replacement rate? And if practitioners and researchers wanted to appeal to new and beginning and young farmers, what do they need to know about farmers entering the agricultural sector? The purpose of this systematic literature review was to determine the motivations, goals, and identities of new and beginning and young farmers who practice organic agriculture. And here, when we say organic, we refer to any kind of identification in the literature as maybe sustainable, regenerative, alternative, etc. We began this project by doing a preliminary search of beginning farmers in several databases just to get an idea of the types of publications that exist in the literature. So that search yielded a total of 135 articles, which were filtered by abstract. And we took all of the keywords from these articles and ranked them in order of frequency. And then we asked an expert panel to review the top 20 keywords and rank them in order of relevance to our research questions. Here you can see the final keywords we settled on, and the asterisks indicate that search includes all endings to that word. So the search farm asterisk would include farmer and farming, for example. Once we had our keywords, we refined our inclusion and exclusion criteria. These set firm boundaries for articles that we would either include or exclude. So we focused on peer-reviewed journals published within the last 10 years with a study site in the United States. We excluded gray literature since the study's aim is to assess the quality of available academic research. And we chose the 10-year parameter to account for any changes since the 2009 Great Recession that may shape farmer motivations. Finally, we conducted our search in Web of Science, which is a comprehensive citation database in the social science discipline. Our initial search yielded 223 articles, which were then filtered by the title. So we looked for key terms or ideas that we thought were related to our research question and suitable for the study. And if we were unsure about it, we just kept it for the next step. And then we filtered them by abstract, and it was the same process, and that left us with 25 articles once we had filtered by title and then by abstract. For the final 25 articles, we conducted a quality assessment which 3 researchers from this study reviewed an article's methods and results to establish if the study was good quality. And the assessment criteria ranged from detailed participant recruitment, procedural rigor, well-described, comprehensive results, among other criteria. At the end of that, we ended up eliminating 4 articles, which left 21 in the final study. From these, we extracted key data, particularly in, conclusions, which would apply to all of the people in the sample, and all samples included either new and beginning farmers, or young farmers, or first-generation farmers. We analyzed the 21 articles using a socio-ecological model seen here. This is adapted from McElroy et al., 1988. These models are widely used in health sciences to study a behavioral outcome. And in our study, starting a farm is the behavioral outcome. And so you can see the layers here: intrapersonal, interpersonal, institutional, community, and policy. And in our analysis, we focused on the characteristics that apply to a farmer starting a farm. Now I will cover a few descriptive characteristics of the article sample. This frequency chart shows you how many articles were published in each year from 2010 to 2020. In general, the sample size is small, but it's worth pointing out that 11 of the 21 articles are just from the last 3 years. This table shows how many articles came from which journal. There wasn't necessarily a prolific journal that stands out, but Rural Sociology has the most articles of any journal. Here you see keyword groups listed. All 21 articles included 87 keywords total, which I then categorized. These are the top categories, and each has a count of keyword frequency. This can tell us in general what the literature base is talking about. So in this case, the type of agriculture a farmer practices, the type of farmer they are, maybe their identity as a woman or young or beginning, etc. And overall, these keyword groups indicate that the literature is about farmers farming, of course, but also taking into account the perspective we study them from, health and well-being of communities and individuals, accessing land, economic conditions, geographical areas that may be a focus, and also social changes coming from farmers. Here is our socio-ecological model of new and beginning organic farmers. I analyzed and categorized all article conclusions according to their layer. So when I reference things like social movements, social goals, ideals, etc., what I'm talking about is what this food movement sees itself as, which is a reaction to conventional agriculture. Conventional ag is typically associated with land degradation, contamination, pollution, etc. So in this study, we don't claim to address the degree of truth to any of these statements, who is right or who is wrong. We just report our analysis of other studies' conclusions. So farmers who refer to their social goals, etc., are usually talking about farming practices that are ecologically sustainable, a focus on eating local, fresh, and healthy food, advocating for farm workers, food access and food security, and a public educated about their values. The interpersonal layer describes a socially advantaged farmer living with identity conflict. The literature review overwhelmingly describes a class of farmers who are wealthy or who have access to wealth, are well educated, and have at least a bachelor's degree, and are white. You'll see that white isn't listed as an intrapersonal characteristic because the study's conclusions didn't provide an analysis of the racial homogeneity of the sample. Most studies addressed the overwhelmingly white sample in the sense that they explain it's reflective of the local demographics in the area. So this could indicate a more troubling trend that new and beginning organic farmers are only happening, these studies are only happening in areas that are white, leaving much to be desired in the area of a sample diversity. Or it could mean that new and beginning farmers are actually mostly white and wealthy, compelling the question of why. And racism and economic inequities may exclude racial minorities that are afforded to wealthy whites. One of the most prevalent themes throughout was identity conflict. For example, women found it hard to identify with the term farmer due to its masculine identity, and women grapple with traditional gender roles of being a caretaker while also viewing themselves as dedicated to hard physical labor. A common conflict was wanting to be sustainable and wanting to make an income. Farmers have a difficult time adhering to social goals like environmental sustainability or food security, while also making enough money to sustain their business and themselves. Farmers who can stick to their goals are usually the ones who can afford it, and they have wealth or another job. There are also farmers who can't afford maybe to be that idealistic and compromise in the way of charging the customer more, scaling back their operation. All farmers who contend with this conflict are certainly committed if they're willing to live with a low salary, or be idealistic if they pursue their social missions despite finances. The final intrapersonal characteristic is inexperienced. New and beginning farmers can come from multi-generational farming families, but most of the studies we analyzed, they did not. Coming to farming from a second career or later in life, the farmers started from scratch, and a lot of them overcame that learning curve through an apprenticeship or interning or volunteering. Intrapersonal refers to how farmers interact with their loved ones, families, friends, and other social support networks. So new and beginning farmers take pride in providing food and income for their family and raising children in what they describe as a wholesome environment. Disconnecting is when farmers report they have a difficult time separating themselves from the farm, physically and emotionally, in order to decompress and spend time with their family. The farmers in these studies are more likely to be small scale and direct to consumer markets. One emerging interpersonal characteristic is that farmers gain social capital through their farm activities, especially women. Having a unique identity gives you a leg up compared to farmers who are perceived as typical, which you may envision an elderly white man, which may just be a stereotype if you ask me. But consumers are more likely to support who they see as unique growers. Land succession is a characteristic that permeates almost all layers. It starts in intrapersonal. People who have wealth can access land. Here it shows up as inheriting or passing along land, and many new and beginning farmers coming in first generation don't have a plan to pass on their land at this point. Land inheritance is also perhaps a gendered process, with a male head of household passing on land to a son. And one result of this tradition is that women farmers often access land through marrying a man who has inherited a farm, which can also limit LGBTQ people if they don't marry a man. The institutional layer describes farm operations that set out to be an example of what socially responsible local food movements look like. Farmers want to operate a farm that inspires others both to farm but also to buy local food. Farmers even look at the farm itself as a commodity they can sell. Educational workshops serve as a version of value-added products, plus the benefit of practicing their socially driven goals, perhaps water conservation or urban greening, whatever it may be. However, farmers still see a lot of gender division of labor on farms, with women taking charge of the care work over other responsibilities. With more and more women entering ag from census to census, we are likely to see this change over time, with women taking on more decision-making roles as primary producers. No matter who it is working on the farm, labor is a huge barrier and source of conflict for farmers. Many farmers who cannot afford to pay fair wages will employ volunteers or invite apprentices for a small stipend. Even other farmers will forego paying themselves if it means they can pay their employees a living wage. Access to experienced and reliable labor is among the greatest barriers for new and beginning farmers who may otherwise do all the work themselves or maybe with a partner. The community layer describes a local food environment that is engaging by learning from and with other farmers. It is an educational experience with farmers educating their customers, youth, workers, anyone as a top priority for their farm's mission. Their educational goals for their community include understanding where the food you eat comes from and the perceived costs and benefits of those foods. There is clear collaboration going on among farmers, with bartering, sharing, and reciprocity essential for many new and beginning farmers. As I mentioned earlier, farmers in this study are more likely to be small scale, which poses an equipment barrier. Much available equipment technology is not suitable for small acreage. Paired with economic immobility, some farmers cannot buy their own equipment. Bartering, sharing, and reciprocity make overcoming these barriers a little more manageable. Despite being a community that strives for positive social change, there is certainly room for improvement. Discrimination against women was a persistent theme in the literature, with men finding women physically incapable of farm work and questioning their emotions and intelligence. Interestingly, the literature also establishes that the consumers of the food that new and beginning organic farms grow are racially and economically homogeneous. That is, they are white and wealthy. This fact is freely accepted about consumers, but not directly analyzed when the farmers in the study are also white and wealthy. The final layer is policy. Most articles didn't directly address the need for policy changes, so this layer has especially limited generalizability. The first characteristic of the policy layer is land acquisition. Studies reported land access as a barrier, even if they did not address policy directly. One article in this review was dedicated entirely to land transfer tools for new and beginning farmers. Accessing land is tied closely to a gendered process of marriage and/or access to capital. These two principles alone limits who can farm to some degree. Farmers also need policies that improve equitability for disadvantaged farmers. Women, racial minorities, and socially disadvantaged people face additional barriers that others don't, and it's clear in the literature that it's affecting their success. Here's one tangible example to conclude this section. A lot of farm equipment is built for men's bodies, and many women are unable to use it due to their body type. The conclusions presented here have limited generalizability since we only have 21 articles. The small sample itself indicates that this is an understudied area of research. First, the research indicates that new and beginning organic farmers are overwhelmingly white and wealthy. Unfortunately, the literature we analyzed did not provide an adequate analysis of the racial and economic homogeneity of their own samples. If this is coincidence, then researchers must address this in future studies by recruiting diverse groups of farmers. Next, identity conflict that centers around idealistic values versus making a living inevitably requires a compromise, either supplementing their farm's low income or sacrificing their commitment to an ideal, which could be a range of things, such as tilling after being decidedly no-till, or raising prices at market, even if it outprices the low-income groups you sought out to help. There is balance too, which is infrequently reported in this review and could serve as an area of focus for future research. Such a jump in the percentage of women farmers from the 2012 Census of Agriculture to 2017 should bring policymakers' attention to the barriers women face in gaining entries to farming. All marginalized groups need better resources, but this study analyzed a lot of data on women specifically. Women farmers have made great strides in agriculture and the USDA in particular. The support women need comes from their communities they live in and is more local in nature. Finally, we conclude in saying that yes, there is a new generation of organic farmers, and knowing their goals, motivations, and identities can help providers across sectors appeal to and recruit farmers and be ready to meet them where they are, while also building a more equitable future for farmers and provide support that encourages a socially and racially diverse farming community. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions, comments, or would like to chat further about my research, please send me an email. Thank you.